Despite rising COVID cases, the show is going on. The Lollapalooza Music Festival, which routinely attracts more than 100,000 people per day, kicks off next week. The festival in Grant Park is happening at full capacity while the more transmissible Delta variant is causing a rise in COVID cases right here, with Chicago's daily average now at 100 cases per day and the positivity rate at 1.6%. And joining us now with more are Jim DeRogatis, co-host of Sound Opinions on the radio, and Dr. Emily Landon, Executive Medical Director for Infection Prevention and Control at UChicago Medicine. We did invite Lollapalooza organizers to join this conversation, but they said they didn't have anyone available this evening. But we do welcome both of you back here to Chicago tonight. First with you, Jim DeRogatis, and I think I know the answer to this. Lollapalooza going forward with 100,000 people per day, good idea?
I think it's insane, Paris. There was a concert that drew 20,000 people, an electronic dance music concert in the Netherlands in late July. And they were strident about making sure every attendee was vaccinated. So out of 20,000 vaccinated people, there were 5,000 infections. 1,000 infections, 5%, which makes sense. The vaccine is 95% effective, but only 95, 1,000 people. If we extrapolate that number to 100,000 in Chicago, that's 5,000 infections. We're going to shut the city down again for this greedy corporate festival?
Dr. Emily Landon, could that happen here, given the way Jim is extrapolating what happened in the Netherlands? Could Lollapalooza become somewhat of a super spreader event?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. There's no reason to believe that there are not going to be infections that happen at Lollapalooza. Anyone going to Lollapalooza should absolutely expect that they're going to be exposed to COVID at Lollapalooza. This isn't a kind of place where you have assigned seating and where people can keep their distance. It happens in my neighborhood, and I watch it every year. It is literally a crush of humanity all in one place, and you can have a ton of contact with a lot of different people. I know it's outside, but I know they're requiring vaccination or a recent negative test, but that's not enough to really prevent spread from happening. However,
that,
I have to...
Go ahead, doctor. I was going to say, given that, do you still think it should go on then?
I think it's a terrible idea, but it's going to happen, and there's very little that we can do about it. And so I think we have to remember that a lot of these are young people that I'll say this. Individuals who are immunocompromised, those who are unvaccinated and trying to avoid getting COVID, and people who live with or have close contact with people that are high risk for a bad outcome should stay home. They should rethink that ticket. You shouldn't go. It's probably too high of a risk. But, if young people feel like this is the only thing that's getting them through their time and they want to go, you kind of have to accept the fact that you're going to be exposed. You're probably going to be exposed to COVID. And the most important thing is to remember that after, you should treat the event like it's an exposure. And afterwards, if you feel sick, you need to isolate from other people and get tested. Just make sure you're following the appropriate precautions.
A lot to think about when heading out there to see the Foo Fighters or Journey or some of those other bands. Jim DeRogatis, one of the things that Dr. Arwady told me a few months ago when this announcement was made was Lollapalooza was going to have some kind of electronic online way of ensuring folks were vaccinated. They weren't going to check vaccination status at the gate. To your knowledge, is there any way that they're going to be able to check the test or the vaccination status of the revelers?
No, there is no app that is part of their app that is taking vaccination card downloads. This has been a bad neighbor for the entire time it's been in Grant Park. The fences come down and hundreds of people get into Lollapalooza every year. There have been stage crushes like when Rage Against the Machine played. This year, the supremely moronic testosterone crazed Limp Bizkit is a headliner. There's a documentary that begins airing on Friday on HBO. I saw a screener as a review about Woodstock 99, and the rioting and the sexual assaults at Woodstock 99 began when Limp Bizkit played. They can't control their own gates. Why are we supposed to believe that they are going to be diligent about checking for vaccination? It's absurd, Paris. And, Dr. Emily is a music fan. She happens to favor the CSO and musical theater. I've interviewed her to learn a lot about COVID. The crush of 20, 30,000 people in a field eager to get nearest as possible to the stage is very different from people seeing Wilco at Millennium Park. And this is not a socially distanced or aware crowd. I don't, and then they're going to leave and they're going to go to the bars and they're going to go to the hotels and they're going to go to the Starbucks. And if the rain kicks them out, as we've had with thunderstorms twice in the last 5 years, they're going to shelter wherever they can. It is not going to stay confined to those 100,000 people in Grant Park. I don't understand how Dr. Arwady had allowed Mayor Lightfoot to go ahead with this.
Tell me what you really think about Limp Bizkit there, Jim. Dr. Landon, what about the fact that people might be coming in from out of state? If you look at hot spots in Missouri, in Arkansas, is that a risk here?
Yeah, I think it's important for people that live here and sort of operate in the Chicago landscape to understand that there are people coming from places where it's not common for unvaccinated people to wear masks, where people don't keep their distance. And there's no way to keep your distance at Lollapalooza. I'll remind people that there are routinely trampling injuries that happen at Lollapalooza, heat stroke related injuries. Lollapalooza is a little bit, it's way too much for me. But it is, this is now we have the added risk of this infection and people are going to be bringing it. Missouri is a huge hotspot right now. There are a lot of parts of the country where people don't want to wear masks. They don't want to get vaccinated. They don't want to follow the rules of making sure you get tested. So you really should know that before you embark upon this. And you should understand that even though you may feel like you have sort of, I know I have sort of a much bigger distance, like sort of personal space that I expect people to keep nowadays. That's not going to happen at Lollapalooza. And so if you are expecting this to be somewhat like other events that you've attended during the pandemic, it's not going to work out that way. You should really rethink that ticket.
And like I said, Jim, I mean, we were promised that there would be some kind of online QR code, vaccination checking passport type of thing. It's not going to happen. What Lollapalooza does say on their website about COVID is that there must be vaccination or show proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 72 hours of attendance. If unvaccinated, wear a mask on site. If unvaccinated or at a high risk for severe COVID-19, avoid crowded areas of the festival and stay at least 6 feet away from other groups. Are these effective protocols here for people to follow?
And look, Paris, Lollapalooza lies. You and me, and we've talked about Lollapalooza for years on the show, and every time we've invited the corporate owners, Live Nation and C3 Presents, to come on the show, they've never been available once. What I'm concerned about, why is the rock critic upset about this rock show happening? What I'm concerned about is just now the infrastructure that is here 365 days a year, our 4 dozen great music venues in every genre from jazz to rock to hip hop are struggling to reopen. They have not gotten the money yet that was approved 4 months ago in the Save Our Stages Act in Congress. They're lucky to be alive after 18 months of darkness. And if they have to close again because of this corporate ridiculousness in the middle of Grant Park, this sweetheart deal that was structured by Daley with his nephew as the lobbyist and Mayor Emanuel, whose brother sits on the board of directors of Lollapalooza, I do not understand what Mayor Lightfoot is thinking.
And we should note there are other festivals that are going to happen later this summer, fall, Pitchfork, Riot Fest. Dr. Landon, we've seen positivity rates triple here in Chicago over the last week, 1.6% now, still relatively low, but going in the wrong direction. How bad could this current wave get?
Well, the good news is that the vast majority of people who attend Lollapalooza are younger and healthier, and therefore, when they roll the dice with COVID, they're less likely to end up in the hospital or to die of COVID. Now, I'll remind everyone that dying of COVID is just one thing that can happen. Having long COVID or organ damage that comes back to bite you 10, 20 years down the line are not things that I would wish on any of these people. But, this is the United States, and we have apparently taken the approach that if you want to protect yourself, you protect yourself. And if you want to do stupid things, you can do stupid things. And that seems to be the plan with respect to Lollapalooza. Now, I hope that many of these people are going to, once they leave Lollapalooza, it's really important you remember that it is you probably have been exposed. If you develop any symptoms, you need to stay home. If we can try and keep that contained, that's going to be the best bet. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I think, we could see a lot of infections from this. The good news is that in Chicago, we do have really very high vaccination rates compared to other parts of the country. And most of our highest risk population, especially older individuals, are highly vaccinated. And so that should help sort of is flatten the curve, so to speak, with respect to hospitalizations and deaths. But it's certainly not going to protect us from a big increase in cases, and some people will get very sick.
A lot of things for concert goers to keep in mind should they choose to go mosh with their fellow concert goers to a Limp Bizkit show. And our thanks to Jim DeRogatis and to Dr. Emily Landon. Thank you so much.
You bet, Barry. Paris, it's all about the nookie, says Limp Bizkit.